It was a Wednesday evening, late spring, maybe early summer. One of those days that smells like grass clippings and tired sweat. I'd just gotten home from a 10-hour shift fixing HVAC units. Second job, under the table, no benefits. My shirt clung to my back. My hands were still stained with machine grease. And in my right hand, I held the week's mail. Bills mostly, one marked urgent. A thick envelope from Josh's school and a flyer for roofing I'd never afford. I walked into the house like I always did. Quietly, respectfully. Not a sound to startle them. Not because they asked for peace, but because that's what I'd learned to do, disappear into the spaces between them. I had stopped announcing my arrival years ago. As I passed the hallway, I heard him. My stepson, Josh. 16, with a voice just deep enough to sound like a man, and sharp enough to make sure you knew he didn't respect you. "I wish it was just the two of us again," he said, almost bored. "Like before." I stopped, just like that, frozen. My thumb rubbed the corner of the envelope. I didn't step forward. I didn't speak. He was talking to Haley, his mother, my wife, though I never heard her respond. Josh's voice continued, casual. It was better. No one in the way. I stood there in the hallway, the way you might stand in a burned-down house, realizing the smoke you smelled days ago had already taken the walls. Realizing the damage wasn't new, just finally undeniable. 5 years I'd lived in that home. Not as dad. That was never expected. I knew that, but as something. As the man who showed up, stayed up late helping him with algebra, paid for his school sports, fixed his bike, scraped his vomit out of the carpet during flu season. The one who answered when Dan, the biological father, didn't. But in Josh's mind, none of that mattered. He wanted it to go back. Back to when it was just him and his mother. Back to the time before I'd entered their lives like an unwanted guest who overstayed. And Haley, her silence was worse than his words. I don't know how long I stood there before I moved again. I made my way upstairs and into his room. It smelled like old socks and spray deodorant. I didn't bother turning on the light. I pulled out the duffel bag from the closet, the red one, duct tape wrapped around one handle. The one I bought him for soccer tournaments 2 years ago. I packed it quietly. One of his hoodies, 2 pairs of jeans, socks, underwear, a toothbrush still sealed in plastic, his noise-canceling headphones, a box of those protein bars he liked, cookies and cream. Then I sat at my desk and printed out a single sheet of paper, Dan's last known address in Nevada, and the 2 phone numbers I had saved from Haley's emergency contact list. I folded the page, slipped it into the outside pocket of the duffel, and zipped it shut. I walked back downstairs. Josh was still on the couch, headphones on now, playing something loud and chaotic. His eyes flicked up when I placed the bag by the front door. "What's that?" "You said you missed him," I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. "Now's your chance." He paused the game. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. I opened the front door and walked out, letting it close behind me with a soft click. No yelling. No scene. Just the click of a door and the sound of my footsteps down the porch stairs. I thought I was doing the right thing. Or at least the only thing left. Be patient. Be steady. Be the adult. That's what I told myself every time Josh rolled his eyes at me during dinner. Every time he slammed his door after I reminded him to clean up his mess. Every time he muttered whatever under his breath like I was some inconvenience he had to tolerate. I told myself he was just a teenager, angry at the world, missing his father, searching for identity. I swallowed the disrespect. I reasoned with myself while paying for his school fees, his cleats, his phone plan, his dentist visits. I sat in bleachers for games he never acknowledged me at. Waited in parking lots when practices ran late. Canceled weekends with friends to make room for his tournaments. Dan, his father, the man whose name was still on the birth certificate, hadn't shown up in years. I think the last real contact was a Facebook message 2 birthdays ago. "Happy birthday, bud." No call. No visit. No money. I didn't ask for credit. I didn't ask to replace anyone. I just kept showing up. Quietly. Every day. Through the exhaustion, the cold shoulders, the silence. Still, somehow, I was the problem. When I told Haley what I'd overheard that night, Josh's wish to rewind time, to erase me. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sighed. He doesn't mean it, Mark. He's going through things. He doesn't know how to express himself. I waited. I watched her eyes, hoping, just hoping, she'd say something else. That I deserved better. That I'd earned my place. That my presence mattered. She didn't. And that, more than Josh's words, more than the years of cold shoulders, that silence from her was the final cut. Not even a wound. Just a quiet confirmation that in her heart, I was temporary too. That's the moment I knew. Knew the balance in the house was never real. Knew I had been carrying something they didn't want. And worst of all, knew I had built a home in a place where I was never invited to stay. I didn't explode. I didn't break anything. I didn't even raise my voice. That would have made it easier for them. A neat little outburst they could point to later and say, see? He overreacted. He always does. No, I went quiet. Quieter than I'd ever been. The next morning, I stopped doing what I'd done for 5 years without applause, without acknowledgement, without even the courtesy of being noticed. I didn't make breakfast. I didn't wash the dishes. I didn't pick up Josh's socks from the hallway floor. I didn't rotate the laundry or pack snacks for his practice, or defrost chicken for dinner. The house creaked in the silence of my absence. Not because I was gone, but because they were finally left alone with the things I used to absorb for them. Haley frowned when she found the sink still full. You didn't clean up? I shrugged. Thought you too wanted things how they were before. The confusion on her face lasted only a second before she looked away. She knew. She just didn't want to name it. Josh barely glanced at me that morning. He walked past wearing the hoodie I'd packed in the duffel bag. That same duffel he'd quietly unpacked after I left the night before. He must have done it while I was out on the porch, staring at the trees like they were the only things in the world that remembered how to stand still. You need a ride to school? Haley asked him. No, he said. I'll walk. I didn't offer. I didn't even look up. And that was how it began. The slow, deliberate unraveling of a role I'd never been allowed to fully claim. I stepped back from everything. No more house manager. No more silent caretaker. No more man holding the family together with duct tape and self-sacrifice. I became exactly what they had treated me as: optional. Background noise. A piece of furniture that no longer matched the decor. 3 days into my withdrawal, I found what I needed in Haley's phone. Dan's number. The biological father. The ghost who floated in and out of Josh's life like a weather pattern. She kept the contact for emergencies. Well, this felt like one. I called. He answered on the third ring, voice groggy and suspicious, like I'd interrupted something. Yeah, it's Mark, I said. Josh's stepdad. Oh, hey, everything okay? I could hear a TV in the background. Loud, chaotic, something half-watched. I'm calling, I said, because your son wants you. Silence on the line. Then, wait, serious? I can't just drop everything right now. My wife's pregnant, man. Things are kinda hectic. I didn't respond. I just let the hollow answer echo between us. Look, he muttered. Just tell him. Tell him I'll try when things settle down. I hung up. A minute later, my phone buzzed. A text from Josh. Seriously, that's all it said. No punctuation. No gratitude. No attempt at conversation. Just wounded disbelief that I had actually taken him at his word. At dinner that night, Haley glared at me like I'd betrayed some unspoken promise. How could you do that? I'm giving him what he asked for, I said. Her jaw clenched. Josh stayed silent, stabbing at his food like it had wronged him personally. But I didn't feel guilt. I felt something else. Relief. Finally, I wasn't the only one responsible for filling the gaps. The days folded into each other after that. Josh grew quieter, less flippant. The anger still flickered under his skin, but it dimmed into something more complicated. A kind of uncertainty he didn't know how to express. One evening, I came home to smoke billowing from the kitchen. Josh stood there holding a charred frozen pizza, eyes wide, face pale. I don't know what happened, he said. I walked past him, turned off the oven, opened the window, and left without comment. He swallowed hard. Thanks. I didn't answer. When a boy is used to someone picking up after him, silence becomes its own kind of lesson. A week after that, I found a folded piece of paper on my pillow. No envelope, just creases worn from someone holding it too long. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Sloppy, uneven, rushed. Mark, I'm sorry. I was mean and unfair. You've done more for me than my dad ever has. I didn't get it before. Now I do. Josh. The words weren't elegant. They didn't need to be. They hit deeper because they were plain, unadorned, written by a boy who had run out of excuses. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the note trembling slightly between my fingers. Not because I was emotional, not yet, but because I knew what it had taken for him to write it. Pride swallowed. Perspective gained. Reality faced. That night, Haley came into our room with red eyes. I found out what he wrote, she whispered. And you were right. I kept giving him a pass because I was scared. Scared he'd resent me. Scared to push him. But in doing that, I hurt you. And I'm sorry. Her voice cracked. I should have defended you. Maybe she should have. Maybe she still wasn't ready to say everything I needed to hear. But the fact that she said anything at all felt like a shift. A tectonic plate finally groaning under the weight of long-held silence. We sat together on the bed, not touching, not speaking, just existing in the fragile possibility of change. Eventually, she said, "We should try family therapy." I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "We should." The next morning, I made breakfast again. Pancakes, bacon, eggs. The kind of meal you make when you're trying to rebuild a bridge rather than burn it. I didn't say why. I didn't need to. I placed a brown paper bag in the center of the table, the same kind I'd used to pack his lunches when he pretended not to like them. In thick black marker, I wrote, "For your trip to Nevada." Josh walked in, hair messy, eyes tired. He saw the bag, froze. "I'm not going," he said quietly. I nodded. "Then remember who is here." He pulled out a chair and sat down. Slowly, like the simple act held meaning now. No apologies. No grand declarations. Just presence. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's the first real step. Haley walked in shortly after, touched my shoulder and squeezed. A small gesture, but one that carried weight. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. For the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like a place learning how to breathe again. The note sat on my pillow like something fragile, like it might vanish if I looked too hard. It wasn't long. It wasn't dramatic. But it was the first thing Josh had ever given me that cost him something. "Mark, I'm sorry. I was mean and unfair. You've done more for me than my dad ever has. I didn't get it before. Now I do. Josh." I read it 3 times. Once for the words, once for the courage it must have taken, and once more because I didn't trust it was real. His handwriting hadn't changed. Still crooked, like it was trying to be cool but kept tripping over itself. But the tone? That was different. There was no sarcasm, no defensive edge. It was quiet, like him. I didn't respond that night, not out loud. I left the note exactly where I found it and turned the light off without another word. But I didn't sleep. I kept thinking back, to the rides to practice, the emergency room visit when he broke his wrist, the cold nights I waited outside because he forgot his keys again, the missed vacations, the drained savings account, the birthday cake I stayed up late baking the year his dad forgot to call. 5 years. 5 years of trying not to care that I wasn't his first choice. Of pretending his silence didn't cut as deep as it did. Of telling myself I was building something. That if I just held on long enough, the storm would pass and we'd come out the other side stronger. That note, it wasn't a rescue, but it was a crack in the door. The next morning, I left him a single line on a sticky note. "I heard you." That was it. No lecture. No thank you. Just acknowledgement. A few days later, I caught him taking out the trash without being asked. Then again, folding laundry in the living room. Small things. Almost nothing. But that's where respect begins. in what no one else sees. Haley noticed too. She didn't say much, but she watched him more, studied him, like she was seeing something that had been there all along but buried too deep to reach. That weekend we all sat down, the three of us, for the first time in what felt like years. Haley had found a family therapist in town, recommended by a friend. Neutral. Josh didn't roll his eyes, didn't argue. He just said, "Yeah, okay." And that meant something. During the first session, he barely spoke. I didn't expect him to. He stared at the floor, arms folded, foot bouncing like he was trying to outrun his own thoughts. But Haley did talk. She said the words I'd waited years to hear. "I think I failed to protect Mark. I thought I was being a good mom, giving Josh space, avoiding conflict. But I was letting someone I love get hurt, over and over, and I didn't stop it." The therapist asked me how that made me feel. I didn't answer at first. My jaw clenched hard enough to make my molars ache. Because if I opened my mouth, I was afraid it would all come pouring out. Not in words, but in rage. All the nights I sat outside Josh's room wondering if I should keep trying. All the mornings I cooked for people who didn't thank me. The weight of being needed and hated at the same time. But I said something. Eventually. Softly. "I don't need to be first in this house. But I need to be seen." The therapist nodded like she understood. I don't know if she did. But Josh looked up at me then. Briefly. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't look through me. We agreed to keep going. Not to fix things overnight. Just to keep showing up. And so we did. That same weekend, I cooked breakfast again. Pancakes, bacon, eggs, the works. Josh wandered in halfway through. "You making those with the crispy edges?" he asked, voice low. I nodded. He sat at the table without another word. Later that morning, I left something on the table. A brown paper bag, folded at the top. A black Sharpie message written across the front. "For your trip to Nevada." Josh walked by, saw it, froze. He didn't touch the bag. "What's this?" "You said you missed your dad," I said. "Thought I'd pack you a few things." "I'm not going," he muttered. I nodded. "Then remember who is here." He didn't look at me. He just sat down, tore a piece off his pancake, chewed slowly, didn't speak. He didn't need to. Sometimes respect doesn't come with a parade. Sometimes it's quiet. A seat taken at the table. A note folded without fanfare. A moment where no one walks away. Haley came in a few minutes later, touched my shoulder. No words. Just her hand, light, apologetic, unsure. I didn't pull away. Over the next week, I kept watching, not for big changes but for consistency. It's easy to fake growth once. Harder to keep choosing it day after day. But Josh tried. He asked if I wanted help at the hardware store. Fixed the wobbly leg on the kitchen table without being told. Came home early from a friend's house without making it a production. None of it was loud. None of it made headlines. But for a boy who used to weaponize silence, effort is a confession. Haley asked one night if I'd consider taking him out. Just the two of us. No therapy. No pressure. Just a meal. A bridge. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to return to the same house of mirrors, the one where I mistook proximity for connection. But I said yes. We went to a local diner. The kind with sticky menus and waitresses who call you hon. Josh didn't look at his phone the whole time. Just sat there, hands folded, eyes mostly on the table. "I used to think you were trying to replace him," he said eventually. I sipped my coffee. Waited. "But now I think you were just trying, period." I nodded. I was. He looked up, eyes raw. I'm still mad at him. I didn't correct him. Didn't try to clean it up. "You should be," I said. We didn't solve everything that night. But we started something not from scratch, but from wreckage. And sometimes that's the better place to begin. Because then, every brick you lay is intentional. The next morning I found another note, tucked under my toolbox. "Thanks for not giving up. I don't think I would have done the same." That one hit harder than the first. Because the first was regret. But the second, that was recognition. The space between us isn't gone, but it's shrinking, not through big speeches, not through dramatic forgiveness, just through showing up, quietly, consistently, and staying. It's been a month, maybe a little more, long enough for things to settle but not long enough to forget. The house feels different now, not warmer, not colder, just clearer, like someone wiped the steam off the bathroom mirror and now we all have to look at ourselves honestly. No more fog to hide behind. Josh doesn't call me Dad. Not often, but sometimes it slips out, usually when he's distracted. Hey, Dad. I mean Mark. Then silence. Then awkwardness. Then nothing. I don't correct him. I don't make it a moment. If it happens, it happens. And honestly, I'm not sure I want it. Not anymore. Because what I've learned, what I've bled for, is that titles don't mean a damn thing without the weight behind them. You can call someone your father, your son, your partner, but if there's no presence behind the word, it's just air. I didn't do this for the name. I did it because I thought they were mine. But families aren't built on effort alone. They're built on recognition. That's what no one tells you about being a stepfather. You carry the load of a role you're never fully invited into. You bleed for people who reserve the right to unmake you at any moment. You can spend years pouring yourself into a house, into routines, into discipline and birthday candles and late-night fevers, and still be told with one sentence that none of it counted. You're not my real dad. You have no rights. I wish it was just the two of us again. Those words don't get erased by apologies. They echo. They set up camp in the hollow parts of your chest. Even when things get better, even when they soften, the silence that follows those words is the part that really sticks. The part where no one defended you. And that's the thing that Haley will never fully understand. She tells people we're healing, that we're rebuilding, that Josh and I are closer than ever. I let her say it, but I don't believe in rebuilding. Not really, because to rebuild something, it has to have been whole in the first place. And this house? It was always cracked. I just kept plastering over the fractures and calling it love. Now, I just call it what it was. Survival. Josh is trying. I see it. I respect it. But I also don't forget. He cleaned the gutters last week without being asked. Fixed the garbage disposal with a YouTube video. Told his mother to stop making excuses for him. These are good signs. They matter. But I still remember that hallway. I still remember the mail in my hand. The heat behind my eyes. The bag I packed. The door I closed. The sound of my own footsteps, calm and final. There's a part of me that never came back into the house after that night. A part of me that still stands on that porch, waiting to be let back in. Not through the door, but into the space between them. Into the right to belong. And I don't know if that door ever really opened again. Maybe it did. Maybe not. The truth is, I started living differently after that. Less giving. More watching. I no longer rush to fix things. I no longer cover for anyone. If the trash piles up, I leave it. If the car needs an oil change, I wait for someone else to notice. I still provide. I still contribute. But I no longer pretend that effort guarantees affection. Because here's what I learned. People don't learn through lectures. They don't learn through comfort. They learn through absence. They learn when the silence gets loud enough to notice. When the person who used to carry the weight stops lifting. When the meals stop appearing. When the lights get shut off because someone forgot to pay the bill. And for once, it wasn't me. Josh has learned that. Slowly. Painfully. Not because I sat him down and explained it, but because I stopped explaining anything. He told me once, quietly, I didn't know what you did until you stopped doing it. And I said, that's how most men disappear. Not in rage. In exhaustion. He didn't respond, but his face said everything. I think about Dan sometimes. The man who left. The man Josh once wished would come back. The ghost who haunted my efforts with his absence. I wonder what he's doing now. Probably sitting in a house with other children who carry his name but not his burdens. Probably missing every milestone. Probably fine. Because the world is kind to men like him. Men who vanish. Men who leave. But to the ones who stay, the ones who try, the ones who build, the world demands more and gives less. That's the irony of it. You get punished for staying. Haley asked me recently if I wanted another child. One that's ours. I didn't answer right away. She took my silence as fear. But it wasn't fear. It was calculation. I was trying to decide if I had anything left in me to give. Because raising a child is sacrifice. But raising someone else's child? That's war. You fight every day not with fists, but with patience. With invisible wounds. And sometimes you lose. I told her I'd think about it. And I meant it. But part of me already knew the answer. This house may be healing. But I'm still limping. Josh graduates next year. His grades are up. His coaches say he's matured. Haley beams when she talks about him now. I listen. I nod. I drive him to practice when he asks. Sometimes he thanks me. Sometimes not. I don't wait for it anymore. The other night we were watching a movie together. Just the two of us. Something loud and dumb. He looked over, halfway through, and said, "I don't know how you didn't walk out on us." I shrugged. "I almost did." He nodded. Didn't press. He knows now. That's enough. Haley came in toward the end, sat beside me, placed her hand over mine. No words, just pressure. That's how she says sorry these days, with touch instead of defense. And maybe that's enough too. Maybe not. But I keep showing up. Not because I'm forgiven. Not because I'm needed. But because that's what I do. I show up. Even when I'm invisible. Even when I'm the easy one to blame. Even when the love comes after the damage. Even when the recognition arrives too late. Because that's what fathers do, real ones. They show up when it's inconvenient. They stay when it's easier to leave. They hold the line even when no one else sees the battle. And sometimes, that's all that separates a family from collapse. Not affection. Not blood. But stubborn, quiet, thankless presence. Josh may never call me dad again. Haley may never fully understand how deep the cut went. But I stayed. When it counted, I stayed. And now I ask you, the one reading this, was I wrong to step back? Was I cruel to stop giving until I was treated like I mattered? Or was that the only way to teach them the value of what they had? What would you have done? Because me, I didn't destroy the family. I just stopped being the only one holding it together.